All right. So, what I want to talk about today is something that is a really, really outdated practice. Okay. So, in the reptile world, the world of herpetology, we have practices that were once believed to be true, once believed to be good practices, and over time, we learn more about the reptiles, we learn more about the species, we get more facts on them, um, and we come to find out that what was once believed to be a good practice and something that you should do, we come to find out that really it's not a good practice. So that's how it becomes an outdated practice, because now we know we should do it this way instead of this way. And if you were doing it this way, you should change up and start doing it this way. Okay, so the practice that I want to talk about today is something I hear a lot. Okay, I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, I do it like this. I heard you should do it like this, and you should do it like this." And when I hear it, I say, "You know what? No, you shouldn't do it like that." And I explain why you shouldn't and why it's an outdated practice. And what I'm talking about is moving your snake from one enclosure to another when you feed them. So a lot of people believe that when you feed your snake, you should take them out of the enclosure that they normally stay in, and then put them in a temporary enclosure to feed them. Okay, and I've heard several different reasons on why people do this. The one I hear the most is that, if you don't move them to a different enclosure every time you open their tank, they're gonna think it's food time, this feeding time. They're gonna strike you. Well, it's not true. Okay, I feed all of my snakes in the enclosure that they stay in full time, and I have rarely ever stuck my hand in an enclosure and gotten struck. And if I do, normally it's because they're in a pissy mood and they just don't want to be handled. But the great thing about snakes is normally they let you know before they strike that they're just not having it and that they just don't want to be touched. So normally they'll hiss at you first. But sometimes, if I have a snake that's not tamed, I'll still pick it right up regardless of whether it wants to be held or not. And the reason why is because if you show that you're scared of it, when it hisses at you, and you pull your hand back and then you just let it be, the next time you go to pick it up, it's going to do the same thing, and you'll never be able to hold that snake because they're going to think that you're scared of them, and they're going to think that they're dominant over you, and you don't want that. So when you're taming a snake, if it hisses at you, you pick it up. I have older snakes. If they hiss at me, I leave them alone, just because they already know that they're not really dominant. They know the situation. They're older, they've been in captivity their whole life, they're tame. So if they hiss at me this time, they're just in a pissy mood. They know that when they're in a better mood, they're not going to hiss at me and I could pick it up. I know they're not going to start to think, "Oh, I'm dominant." Okay, but at the end of the day, we've come to learn that this is an outdated practice, and the reason why is the same reason we don't ship an animal right after it's fed. You shouldn't hold a snake, right after it's fed. I always feed my snakes and then don't touch them for, 48 hours unless I absolutely have to. I give them 2 days to digest their food. And the reason why is because if you pick up a snake right after it eats and you go and you play around with it, it's going to attempt to or actually regurgitate its food. And then you're gonna be feeding it pointlessly, because and I've also had, when I first got into the reptile game, I had snakes and I didn't realize this. I had snakes that I would pick up right after feeding, and one of them would regurgitate, and then they'd go on a food strike. They wouldn't eat for a month or 2 months. And I had this baby snake one time, and it wasn't eating, and it wasn't eating, and it wasn't eating, and I had to start force feeding it and assist feeding it because it wouldn't eat, and it was a baby, and it was so close to dying, and it was because I had picked it up and it had regurgitated its food. So and a baby snake can't go the amount of time an adult snake can go without eating. An adult ball python can go a year without eating and be fine, you know but I've had baby pythons that if they went a month without eating, it would become dangerous, and it could become fatal. So I learned over time not to touch them. So if you move it from its its permanent habitat into a temporary habitat to feed it, and then you go and you pick it back up to put it in its other tank, you know, it could, you know, cause it to try to regurgitate its food, or it could go on a hunger strike. And they don't really, when they're, after they eat, they just like to be left alone. They want to digest their food. They, you know, they want to just chill and be left alone. So, you know, it'll go on hunger strikes a lot of the times because it doesn't want to eat, because it knows you're not going to leave it alone. You know, it's just an all-around bad idea to move a snake from its regular home to a temporary habitat while you're feeding it. All right, so if you have done that, or if you are doing that, rest assured that whatever you heard about this method is outdated, and it's not a good idea, and you should stop doing it. You know, leave your ball python or whatever snake you have in the habitat that it's always in to feed it, because I can assure you that when you go to stick your hand in there the next time, or even 20 times after feeding it, it's not going to look at your hand and think it's food. Okay, it's not going to. You are not food to this ball python. Okay, now an Amazon tree boa, oh yeah, you're always food to an Amazon tree boa. An Amazon tree boa sees movement and assumes it's food. Okay, you know, they always want to bite you, they always want to eat you. They don't realize that they're not big enough to. Okay, a ball python does not look at you and see food. Okay, so rest assured that your ball python is not going to strike you just because you're feeding it in the same enclosure that you pick it up out of every time you go to hold it. Okay, so you know, you can stop doing that. And anytime you hear of this, refer people to this video and let them know, you know, you don't have to do this, and tell them why, because it is an outdated practice and it is not something that we do. Okay, it came to my attention, some other people I know were doing it, and I you know, told them, you don't have to do this, you know. And now they don't do it, but they argued with me at first for like 2 days. They were like, yo, you know, you have to do this, blah blah blah. And I was like, you don't have to do it. So rest assured, you don't have to do it. It's completely fine, and it should be done feeding them in their regular habitat. So that's what this video is about today. I hope you learned something from this, and I hope if you were doing something outdated, you stop doing it. I hope you feed your snakes in the same enclosure that they always live in. You don't want them regurgitating, and you don't want them going on hunger strikes, even though it is okay for them to go on hunger strikes every once in a while. I wouldn't want my snake to go on a hunger strike because of something I did, because that would make me feel bad. But, you know, and I hope you feel the same. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next video.